Hey everybody, Joel, moose-droppings-by-importsauce.com. The next thing on the Ultimate T5 rebuild is to go ahead and rip everything apart and do what we should have done the first time. We're going back to the head, and we are going to go ahead and get this done correctly the way we should have. So stick around, let's do a full head rebuild. Okay, so we had 20 something miles on this car, right? Last segment was, hey, our cam gears exploded. We got new ones, we put that back together. We spent a couple months chasing down oil leaks. This is just because we still had snow up here. We are into spring now, so that's good. But yeah, just seals, things that weren't tightened, just, going through and finding everything. And we were left with 2 check engine codes, intake timing, exhaust timing. So we knew there was a timing issue. The car was bogging down. But then, upon doing a compression check, all of our numbers, all 5 cylinders, were registering about 100 psi, which is too low. These cars, factory or pretty much stock in the same year, same mileage on the engine. Asking a few friends with C30s, S40s to run a compression check, they were well in the 150s. Even with the 8.5 to 1 ratio, where we would lose a little compression based on those forged pistons that we did go with, we shouldn't be losing 50 psi. So the other day we went ahead and pulled the intake mani, pulled the whole intake, pulled the lower intake mani, and then did a leak down test again so that we could really hear what was going on. And I'll put that clip up just of cylinder 1. We found, but cylinder 2 through 4 was exactly the same thing. Cylinder 5 was doing okay. It had the best compression numbers. But moral of the story is, even though the head went to a shop, it was decked, they took it apart, and we trusted their work, right? And we assumed that the head came off in working order, that the head would go back on in working order. And that was our fault, right? Because the head was sitting in the garage on this table for months while it was snowing out here, and we could have been messing around with that and really dialing it in. So that's our mistake. But, this is the first time that we've kind of built from the ground up, and when we're up here and when the weather is garbage and you're 2 years in, taking 3 months off at a time, you don't have a garage, it's hard to kind of just make sure that everything goes smoothly, especially when we don't have friends up here to help us come over and wrench and keep an eye and make sure we don't do something stupid. This was a big one, so lesson learned. We're pulling the head, and we are going to go through this whole thing and what we should have done from the first place. So we have all the Volvo specialty tools here. We're going to do a full valve job. We're going to pull the tappets. We're going to make sure that everything seals and everything is within spec, and bench test everything, and then put it back on. And I would suspect that we're going to have our compression, and I'm not worried about those timing codes now, because obviously we have to retime everything, and we'll double check that. We've done it 3 times already on this engine that has 20 something miles on it. So stay tuned for the journey of the complete head rebuild, and then at that point, essentially everything on this engine should be 100% brand new and ready for action. So obviously this segment should have been done back earlier in the build, and our mistake
has led us to get to rip the head off of the engine that was already installed. So we're going to take you through complete disassembly of the internals of the head, how to spec and blueprint those, and how to do a full valve alignment, assessment, and just get everything ready for this head to be essentially ready to mate to that brand new forged bottom end that we have. So stick around, we'll walk you through what we're doing here and where we end up.
The head is off the vehicle, as we saw earlier in the intro and in the last video of the segment, where we were letting you know that we were going to have to do this. We are going to give you a quick overview here. So we are going to remove the cam gears and the timing ends off of the cams. From there, we're going to remove all the tappets and keep those organized. We're going to use special Volvo tool there, the cam holding tool, and we are going to use a different assortment of feeler gauges and other tools, and we're going to go through and we're going to blueprint and map each of the clearances on the tappets against the cam lobes, and that is going to be for all valves on the intake side and on the exhaust side. So that's going to be two per valve, or two valves per cylinder on both intake and exhaust. So a total of 20 of these. Be a little bit of a tedious process with that. After that, we are going to put those aside. We have a nice Excel spreadsheet that we did not build, but we probably would have built something similar to it. So you'll see us putting numbers into that, where we're going to map all of those, keep them all in order. And then from there, we will move on to removing the valves and getting those all out, cleaned, and measured and blueprinted as well. Put that data into our spreadsheet. And then hopefully, if we're lucky, we will be able to marry up certain valves with certain tappets to get our desired target clearances for the valve to A, be 100% closed, and B, have the appropriate clearance on the cam lobe, which will allow it to stay closed, but also allow it to open at the exact increment that Volvo has spec'd out for this engine. We're also going to do a deep clean on this head, even though it only has less than 25 miles on it. We still need to get the mating surfaces cleaned up, soak it in a bath, and make sure that essentially it's going on brand new. As you saw, a lot of the special Volvo tools that we have here, plus tons more in the drawer. All new head gasket set, plus various other things that we'll be working with in order to lap and clean up the valves. So we're just going to get into it. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to put the cam gear lobe assemblies back in where they go. It's really easy to identify what they are now because the timing modules on the end of them have part numbers. And again, the lower part number on these T5s is always the intake side, is what we noticed. But once those come off, we're going to make sure to keep these separated. We will put special markings or tape or something to make sure intake and exhaust do not get mixed up. Once those are off, we will put the timing cover back on with all 46 titanium bolts, the ones that we have from elevatecars.com. And we will use then the cam locking tool as if we were doing a timing job, and that's what's going to give us enough lock to actually get the cap off and the cam gear off. We don't want that extra weight and that extra stuff on there when we go cylinder by cylinder and actually measure clearances. We want to make it as easy as possible. Plus, this will give us a better availability to get in there and clean everything. So what we're going to do now is essentially put the cam gears back in, put the timing cover back on, and start torquing that in so that we can get a cam locking tool in to get the cam gears off.
This T5 engine rebuild is brought to you in part by elevatecars.com. If you own a Volvo, you've probably heard the name Elevate, but if you've never been to the website, you should definitely check it out. ElevateCars.com has plenty of performance and styling parts for your Volvo. Simply visit the website, find your particular model, And from there, you can dial into subcategories. One particular part that we're really excited to add from their catalog on this rebuild is the open deck sleeves. But even if you're just getting started, you can definitely find something within your budget to get your Volvo stepped up to the next level. Go ahead and check them out, elevatecars.com.
Okay, we have gotten the intake and exhaust timing magnets off as expected. Bolts are made out of butter, and we planned on that because when we put the timing video up a couple months ago, everyone was commenting that, hey, I stripped this, and we knew it would happen, so we have some extra ones. In drilling it out, we did eat just a little bit, but this guy is only 29 bucks, and we have a buddy who actually has a handful of those extra. He had a couple extra heads, so we're gonna get that. Everything else is fine here. We have our cam locking tool on. So now we are going to come over here and get our, what is this, T55. Get these caps off. These things strip out pretty easy too. Those are brand new because those stripped the last time, so hopefully I can get those off without damaging those. And then we will get the inside ones out, which look like that. Those are different. Let's see. We got the guy. Oh, I think it's this one. Let's see. The interior T50. Yep. Okay. So, again, just a reminder, if you're doing the head or the timing, make sure that you get extra bolts and plan on it. Here's a part number, 987959. These things are like $2. I don't even know why they're so expensive, because essentially they're might as well be made out of plastic for how much torque you have to put on and how soft the metal is. So anyways, that's locked in. We're gonna go ahead and get those gears off, and then we are gonna mark them because with the paint job that we did, there is no indicators now, intake or exhaust. So we need to make sure that those don't get mixed up. But as a reminder, everything on these has part numbers that are one number apart, and the lower number is on the intake side. Just think that the engine combustion starts on the intake side, so that will be a lower number. Ends in 9.7, ends in 9.8. Same thing. I don't remember the part numbers on the cam gears, but it's the same thing. Same thing with the actual cams. So we're going to pull them off, and then we'll probably put some Sharpie on the back side or tape something up and mark them. Those cam gears are off. Intake and exhaust. The bolt actually was exactly the same. 55, T55. We're being a little careful, but we're finding that this guy right here is zooping them off pretty good. Obviously, I wouldn't use that to put them on and do torque, but to get them off, that works pretty good. Next up, let's get the cam locking tool back off. 46 bolts, timing cover back off, and pull the cover back off, and then we can start looking at our tappets and blueprinting and measuring. Everything is off, and we have started cleaning the surfaces here. So we want to make sure that we have a nice mating of the tool. So initially, we're going to start with cylinder 1, intake side, place the tool, bolt that down, torque, and then after that, we will put the top one on and then allow the tool to push the cam and lock it, hold it into place. And then at that point, we will use our feeler gauge measures and we will start writing down the gaps and clearances that we have inside of there. So they tell us that once it's in, you need the top of the lobe pointing up. We want the bottom flattest part there. So when the instructions say pointing up, it's not going to be pointing up at 12 o'clock, right? Like this, because the tappets are at an angle, so you want them to be off of that. And then essentially you can even just roll this so that it hits the tool, and that'll kind of hold it in place so that it's not wiggling. And then we'll start going down these two at a time, all the way down, and measuring. And then we just made a quick chart, and we'll transfer this to our spreadsheet after, but we'll just run down the intake side, and then we'll run down the exhaust side. And then as we're pulling them off, we will also make sure to keep all of the tappets in order so that we know which ones correspond with which measurements. It's a good baseline to see and know before we get any further, just kind of know what's going on. So we're gonna go and show you that. Okay, so we are ready to do some measuring. We can see here that the holding tool is already on place. We went ahead and flipped everything around. So we're standing on the back where the exhaust would be, and it's just easier to get gauges in from here rather than reach over and come in from the back. So let's take a look here and see. We have our gauges. We have the official Volvo ones. And then we just have some other ones for control, and then for control, and final specking, we have the micrometer. So we'll start off with the Volvo ones, and then these ones have a lot more options on the smaller range. These jump in evens. So we'll see a 0.16 and a 0.18, whereas these ones have super 0.00, numbers. And you can even combine to get odd numbers should you need to on this one. So we'll start off here. We may play with combinations here, and then we'll do a final check on the super precise micrometer, and then we will write those down. One thing, make sure that you take the tappets out of all of the other valve tops, right? Because you need these journals to sit flush. If you still have the tappets in here with the springs, it's going to be kind of cockeyed, and it's not going to allow this tool to completely clamp this and make this flat and simulate the same pressure and clamp as if the cover was actually on. So initially we were going through and we're like, why are our numbers so off? And then we realized, oh, we forgot to pull those tappets out. Make sure that you pull them out and put them back in. We're not going to label them just yet until we get to the cleaning phase and finish measuring. So pull them out. And then when we're done with one, we will take the tool off, pull those two tappets out, set them aside, and then grab the next two, put those back on cylinder 2, and then all the way down. With this tool, you want to make sure that you put the mounting point on, and then you will attach the top piece here with the bolt, and then torque it down to 12 Newton meters, about 8.6 foot-pounds. And that will allow the tool to push down and seat the cam properly with the amount of force on the journals that need to be there for you to do the measuring. And since we have our tool here, let's take a look and see if I can do it with one hand. That was one of our final measurements there. Let's take a look here. Okay, so if I can do it with one hand, right? Let's start with point, let's start low, right? 0.22. Yeah, okay, so we don't want to come in kind of from the top angle. You want to kind of put a little little pressure here so that it slides in nice and flat, right? So kind of angled so that thing goes in side to side. Nice glide on there, right? And that's 0.22. So what we would do is go up to our next one, which is going to be, it's really hard to do with one hand and a greasy hand, 0.24, right? So let's get those out of the way. 0.24 goes in, side to side action, nice glide to it. Then let's go up to 0.26, won't even go in, right? We can't even get it in there. So at that point we know, okay, well, 0.24 is doing pretty good. What we may do is get this guy and get a 0.2 and a 0.05, combine those and see how that feels to know, okay, well, are we closer to 0.24, 0.25, or we can just take our 0.24, slide it through here, dial this in, and you can see that's what we got, 0.246, which is a little bit over, not too far out of spec, but we saw with the other one, 0.14 on the first guy, that's way out of spec. So as we're going down here, we're going to say, hey, maybe some of these tappets got mixed up, maybe they got out of order, but either way, we're going to sort them all out. We're going to marry the best tappet measurement with the best valve measurement, and we're going to end up switching and swapping to see and get everybody to within spec for both the intake clearances, the exhaust clearances, and then if we're really short, it may be that we need to have some of the valves machined to take a little material off so that the tappet sits a little bit more clearance, or we may, if we have way too much clearance, it may be buying, you know, new tappets, because these ones are 160,000, but essentially that's the process all the way down. So we're going to go ahead and do this all the way across these remaining 8 valves and then these 10 valves, and we're going to have those numbers, and then at that point we will move on to the next step of disassembling, getting those tappets out of the way, cleaned, labeled, and put away so that they don't get mixed up and they have all the specs associated with them, and then we will move on to actual valves. I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of key points. I think those are the big ones right there. You want to make sure that your mating surface on the outside are all cleaned up before you put the tool on, so that you have a good solid fresh mate on those as well. When you put the cam in, you want to make sure that the top of the lobe is up off of the tappet. Obviously, we don't want it pushing it down. We want to see what that resting clearance is. So you can put it on and then you can just push the lobe all the way so that it's flush against the back, and then you'll know that that is the resting clearance that you should be measuring. Measuring all the clearances is done. Before we get to our spreadsheet, just did some quick numbers. Intake side, exhaust side. Exhaust side, I know off the top of my head, is 0.40 plus or minus 0.03. Everything there is within spec, but we can see there's where our problem was. Probably where our compression was going over on intake side. So the next thing we're going to do is clean these cams, put them aside, and of course tag and remember which one is intake, which one is exhaust. And then at that point, we're going to pull the tappets, clean them, bag them, tag them in their individual bags, and then we will move on to pulling our valves out.
This T5 engine rebuild is brought to you in part by IPDUSA.com. IPD is Import Sauce's go-to for anything we need maintenance or repair on any of our Volvos. One reason we like them, the My Garage feature, where you can add all your Volvos and then quickly shop for particular parts for that vehicle. When you click on anything, it will give you an alert letting you know that this does fit. If there are fitment issues, you will get an alert when adding to cart, and this will let you know what exactly to check out before. This will ensure that you are getting exactly the right part for your Volvo. Second thing we love, kit builders. Here, for popular items, you can get the option to build a kit by adding on additional components that may be related. In many cases, you'll have options for genuine Volvo, or for a more budget-friendly shopping cart, you can add aftermarket. So, when you're going through, you can either select or not select certain components and make sure that you're getting exactly what you need. Lastly, customer service. Their customer service is great. They are US based here on the West Coast. Anytime we call the phone number, a real live Volvo owner and daily driver answers the phone and works with you on any product questions or help with your shopping cart. If you're getting your parts anywhere else, go ahead and check out ipdusa.com.
First tappet is out. We have 20 bags. We will go I1, I2, all the way to 10. Then we'll do E, 1 through 10. Measuring here. Need a special mic that will be deep enough to get into the deepest part there. So this guy is cleaned up. And we will go ahead and add this number onto our sheet here for intake 1 tappet. And then we'll just carry on with the other 19. 20 tappets. Buckets are out, bagged, tagged, measured. We don't see a lot of variance. 4 and 5 cylinder. 15.9, almost 16, right? I mean, that's almost a 16, and then mostly hovering right around there, but not too much variation across those. So the next thing is getting some valves out. So we're gonna open up some of these boxes where we have some tools, and we'll show you what that looks like. First valve is out. So we are using the Amazon kit here. Just pretty much a big C-clamp, right? So, just flip this up on its side. That way we can have the C-clamp like that. And what we did was, you want to find the appropriate attachment. Here, we're using the 25 and the 23 mil. So the 25, larger one, you want to go with the size that's going to hit that retainer right there. Not too big, not too small. That one worked perfect. And then for the valve side, we can see just sits in there, right? And as you start clamping this down, it will start pushing that up where you can access that keeper there. A lot of people are just using these magnets, stick them in. I found it was a little hard to get this down into the area, and it wouldn't go in far enough. So what I did is just got a really thin flathead screwdriver and kind of boop boop popped those off, and then stuck this, and it was able to grab those. So those are now out. Next thing, special stem puller tool. So pretty much this guy just goes in. Make sure that you grab the stem and you pop it out, and then discard it. In most cases, they will fall apart, and that's fine. And that's why the valve head gasket kit comes with all new ones. And then we also, anytime we do a head gasket and don't use certain things, we just save them, so we got extras, right? The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take actually two things. Is you want to continue to add these numbers down. So with a micrometer, we're going to put that in. We're going to take that down, make sure it's zeroed out, and then let me get an angle here for you. We're going to go ahead and put that on like so, and we'll document that number. Last thing we want to do is open the keepers up, pull the spring and the retainer off. And we're going to spin this on a drill so that we can check to see if any of these valves are bent. So let's take a look at that. Everybody is out, bagged and tagged. Everybody has been measured. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to do a tool reset. We're going to clean every single tool that we have here, put it away, and then throw this down in our bucket. We are only going to be soaking for a couple hours with our Simple Green HD. But it's too late to babysit it tonight, so we're just going to clean up, clean this table off, get fresh paper, and get a clean working environment so that we can start getting everything ready to put back together. Here we are. Workstation has been reset. All tools put away. Next thing we're going to do is give a little bath to the head. We are using the Simple Green Heavy Duty Cleaner. You want to be careful with some of the cleansers out there because of the aluminum. There could be reactions, and if you guys have used things like, for example, Super Clean or other things of that nature, you may notice kind of a white chalky film after, and that is really just some of the ingredients that are in the degreaser or solvents come out and they interact with the aluminum, and you end up having to do another clean after the fact. So this one is great for aluminum, and it makes this 1 gallon, it says, up to 14 gallons. We're going to need definitely quite a few to get this thing fully submerged. This is a brand new bin that you can get. And what we're going to do is get this outside and just add our degreaser or heavy duty cleaner. And we're just going to fill the water. That's going to be our mixture. And we will make sure that everything is submerged. We don't have to go too crazy on this process because, again, there's not too many miles. Less than 25 on this. The oil's brand new. There's not much going on. We're just kind of giving it a quick bath and getting all that stuff off of there and clean and ready for the rebuild. We'll probably do the timing cover separately. On there, this is a little bit smaller form, so we can get away with, you know, not wasting all the water and stuff to submerge it. Maybe just a quick pressure wash on there. So we'll get this outside and we will get that mixed up and show you what that looks like as it starts to soak. Okay, we have our mix in there now. Here, all that foam kind of breaking down, so we're gonna keep an eye on this for maybe about 10 minutes. We'll come back. As this foam goes down, we'll be able to see and make sure that everything is completely submerged, because we can see here that it is not. So add a little bit of water and just keep an eye, make sure we get it all completely in there. The head is done. We can see all that 166,000 miles of carbon buildup is off. Next thing we're going to do is start cleaning our internals one by one. Valves, springs, retainers, keepers, and do another pass on our timing cover here. And then at that point we will start looking at the spreadsheet and figuring out exactly what our problem was. Obviously we saw the numbers were off, but let's see if maybe those tappets got mixed up. That's why we got to clean them, get inside dimensions that they came with, and then we can see how much they have been worn, and then we can start figuring out in what order we're going to be putting these in and doing a bench test on the seals, and do some valve lapping in there as well. Okay, we are on to cleaning internals. We got 20 bags there, and we're letting them soak in our same degreaser solution. And as they're soaking, we are, the valve stems were all pretty clean, and we don't want to touch the seat underneath where it mates up, because some of them were sealing and we don't want to mess with that. That will come in the lapping process, depending on which valves may need that. So what we're doing is just cleaning off, spraying with a little solution and kind of buffing all that carbon off of there. And the test is when you know that your lapping suction cup sticks on there, and that way you know, okay, it's clean enough, and you're going to be able to do any lapping should you need to. So after these come out of the degreaser solution, and these weren't bad at all, just getting them nice and clean, then they'll go into a rinse, they'll go into a dry, and then we'll get new bags. This one, as you can see, greasy, gritty, and we'll just get a new bag, label it, and then put it aside and go through all 20 of them, and then our internals will be ready for test fitting. All internals are clean. Took us a couple days here. There are 7 parts per valve, right? 2 keepers, 2 spring retainers, spring, tappet, valve. So what we're going to do is pull all this off the table, get a fresh piece of paper down, and then we are going to pick up with measuring our clearances based on the rearrangement of the tappets based on our Excel spreadsheet. So we'll talk about that here in a second. Everything is cleaned up and ready to go. Right here, I am going to show you guys the Excel spreadsheet on how we were able to figure out which of the tappets to move around and shift to different cylinders and different valves so that we could get a dialed in clearance on all of our lobes across both intake and exhaust. So let's take a quick look at that spreadsheet here.
This is our spreadsheet that we've been using to keep everything in order, keep track of everything. So initially, and you can make one for yourself however you see fit, but we want to do our initial readings, right? So over here we have our cylinders, and then each one of those cylinders has 2 intakes, 2 exhaust, intake 1, intake 2, exhaust 1, exhaust 2, all the way down. Intake spec on the clearances 0.20 and then plus or minus 0.03, which means 0.17 or 0.23. On the exhaust side, 0.40 plus or minus 0.03, so 0.37 and 0.43. But you want those to be as close to those as possible, right? So if you have some on, for example, intake 1 that are 0.23, and then your exhaust or 0.37, those are all on the very far end of it, and if you're going through all this trouble, you should be able to get those as close to the factory spec as possible, so as the engine continues to work and wear, that there is room for them to stay within spec, right? If you have something at let's say like 0.023, which is going to be very, at the top end. A little bit of wear, a little bit of this and that, and really quickly it's going to be out of spec. So shoot for the target, and let's say you're doing a head gasket later, or just a valve cover, and you're checking, and you say, okay, yeah, they're still in spec. I don't need to pull the head off, and so that's why you want to start as close to possible as the spec. And so you're going to measure everything on there. You can keep track of it, and then you want to just keep track of plus or minus on there. And then based on that, it'll tell you the approximate tappet thickness that you would want to use based on a sheet where you went down and documented all of the tappets, did 2 measurements on there, averaged those out, and then you'll be able to see the difference between the tappet that is in there versus the tappet that you need. You can see what exactly that would be, and then at the end you can clear out this column, here, and you can start going through and placing tappets mathematically and just checking, okay, yeah, this one's going to come out with the final thickness, or this one's going to get us there. So there's a couple different tabs on here. You can keep track after any lapping. You can do final values. So I would encourage you to open a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet and do something very similar to this, because it makes it very easy after you write down your specs to go back down, fill everything in, keep it organized, and rearrange based on what you need. And then at that point, if you have to order any tappets, Volvo does have a whole pile of them available for sale on their website. I think we were paying like 20 something bucks a pop. So by playing musical tappets, you can hopefully get away with only having to buy just a few of those for anything that is not within spec, or anything valve wise that you're not going to have the machine shop grind down. And this is good just, once it gets back from the machine shop as well, to double check and keep everything organized, and just save this, because maybe 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're doing a head gasket. You can check all your numbers, and you can see how much wear has actually happened on the engine and those internals as well.
So you can see how useful that spreadsheet is in the event that we needed more clearance on anything. We could take a valve and go to a machine shop. I mean, if we were really, we could, try to shave it down a little bit ourselves. If we were a little short, it may have meant sourcing some other tappets or some newer tappet buckets that didn't have as much wear on them. But we lucked out in the fact that everything should be within spec. But we are going to double check that, right? We're not just going to put it in, slap it together, call it a day. So we have our cam, or our installation tool, or our removal tool. We are going to go one cylinder at a time. So we're going to start with cylinder 1 here, intake 1 and 2, exhaust 1 and 2. We're going to install those back, not with the valve seals. We're not going to do that at this point. They're not required, and we don't want to risk damaging them. They're very, very sensitive. What we're going to do is install those, and then we're going to use our clamping tool, which is somewhere over there, and we're going to put the cam lobe intake on back here, and then we're going to measure our clearances again. And now, as we do that, we'll remove it, then we'll move on, then we'll move on, then we'll move on. And we're going to recheck all the clearances on all the lobes, intake and exhaust, with our new tappet configuration, just to make sure that those are spec'd out, and we are going to write down those numbers, right? And those numbers are going to be important, because when we go to the seal test to make sure that the valves on the bottom end are actually sealing, when we do that, pumping the air, the water, sealing everything up, that will then tell us if we need to lap that valve, or it seats properly and seals properly as is. And so these numbers and clearances are important, because it'll tell us how much we have room to actually lap, right? If we have still quite a bit of margin in there, then we can really go to town on some lapping and make sure. But if we're spot on, we know, we probably don't want to lap this. Maybe we want to go back to the spreadsheet and see if maybe another configuration of tappets will give us just a little bit more, so that we could do some lapping on those valves and seats. So initially, we're just going to install one. We'll show you what that looks like when we get back to the test, and then how we're going to do all 20 of these. Here we go with assembly. So what I've done is I have, rather than printing my spreadsheet, I have identified intake side, exhaust side, which tappet is going in the position. So example, intake 1 will be intake 9's tappet, intake 2, exhaust 2's tappet, all that, right? So as we're pulling them out of the bag and then grabbing the tappets we need, we're just going to place them over here, so that we know, okay, this came from the intake 4 bag or whatever. So we opened intake 1, the intake tappet is not going there, it's going to go on intake 4, so we're going to stick it there until we get to use that. So you want to be pretty organized here. Assembly's pretty easy. What you're going to do is we just slid the valve in, used just a little bit of oil on the stem. Again, no seal, but just, you know, so it glides in there. We don't want anything kind of metal on metal at this point. And then we drop the bottom retainer into, set it into those holes there. Stick the spring on there, stick the top retainer, and now we're going to clamp this thing down until the stem is popping through the retainer enough that we can get those two keepers on. And I was already thinking when I was pulling them off that those keepers seem like they're probably going to be the hardest thing to get on there. You know, if you try to use a magnet or anything, it's just going to pull it back out, so that may be a little tricky, but we'll see what we can do. Intake 1 and 2 are fully assembled. The keepers, man, they were tough. Drop of oil on here, and then a magnetic screwdriver, just kind of fish it in, drop it, pull out, and hook those grooves. You know, first one took a while, and then I was like, oh, okay, kind of got the hang of it. The second one only took a few seconds, so you know, it's not too bad. I also was messing around with this tiny magnet, place it on the tiny magnet, stick it in, and then stick this one in next to it and push the keeper down into spot. So before we put the intake, make sure you put the right one on for measuring your intake cam on. Got the oil dropper, and we just all the journals on there, as well as on the tappet sides, the tappet top, all the surfaces that would normally be lubricated. We want to make sure that there is oil on there as well. So now we'll start playing with our feeler gauges, and we already kind of know where to start. On the intake side, we're going to start right about 0.20, and hopefully we shouldn't have to go more than 1 or 2 guys either way. And then again, we'll come over here and we'll just go ahead and run our new specs down and see where we're at. So we'll catch up with you after we run that. Just as a reminder, based on the Excel spreadsheet, over in intake position 1, we have the tappet from intake 9. Intake position 2, we have the tappet from exhaust number 2. And then we'll run down the measuring game again. All the valves are installed, and our after spreadsheet looks a lot better than what it did before, right? On the intake side, it was just number 10, and then we had 4 on the exhaust side. So then we remeasured the actual tappets there. We'll go compare them with the original measurements. So it's important to probably measure 3 times and take an average of those measurements, which is included on the spreadsheet. So now we just have to kind of shift some things around to get those last 5 into spec. We could do quick math, probably go back down to the spreadsheet and consult. We're gonna try not to move everything around. If we can kind of move those 5 or 6 and hopefully get lucky, then we won't have to kind of play this whole game again. But 15 out of 20 is a lot better than where we started, which was, you know, almost every single one of them was off. So we're gonna play around with this and essentially just move stuff around, reclamp, and remeasure clearances. Okay, we were able to rearrange just the 6 tappets and respec everything out, and everything came into play. So next, let's test the seals, right? So everything is still installed minus the seals. We have our spark plugs in now. I'm gonna flip it over, fill the cylinder with water, and then compressors all filled up. See which one of these is leaking. And I'm guessing still probably all the ones that were leaking before, but we'll just make a list so we know what we're going to be working on for the lapping. Water is filled up. We had to throw a couple things under. This table isn't level. You want to make sure it's level. and make sure that the valves are completely submerged, because if they're not, air can leak out where it's not submerged and you won't be able to see it. Here we are all leveled up with 150 index cards through a level on there, and cylinder 1 is completely submerged here. So same thing, I'm going to stick this in right in between the wall that separates exhaust 1 and exhaust 2, so we get an even flow. And then we'll go and not too bad, right? That one's pretty good. But when we did the test, the leak down test, we could obviously see that cylinders 1 through 3, it was definitely intake was the weakest link. So let's take a look here, find that same, taking a look, kind of get it in there. Look at that. Over here on intake 1. Intake 1 good. Back to intake 2. Ooh. Bubbling like a fish tank. So I'm going to write down cylinder 1, intake 2. Get this water out, and I will carry on. Intake through exhaust. We have 5 on intake side, 2 on exhaust side, so 7 out of 20 isn't too bad. We'll dry it up, and then again, get our tool, and we will remove everything from those in question, or we'll work our way down, dry off the internals, put them back in their corresponding bags, and then start the lapping process. We'll show you that. We got our compound, we got our tools, and we'll work through it and then test those 1 cylinder at a time. The lapping process is not too difficult. Valve lapper, essentially a piece of wood with a suction cup on the end. Come in different sizes. Our Permatex valve lapping compound. This stuff's pretty cool. It starts at a thicker grit, and as you work it down, it gets down to a finer grit. You can easily get it to a finer grit as well, mixing a little bit of water, dilute it, and it gets a little softer, but you can start hard, finish nice and soft. Pull your internals, select your valve, put a little bit of compound on there, put some oil on the stem, drop that guy in. I'm putting a link to a good video that pretty much covers the entire thing. I can't really explain it better than what I saw, but essentially the compound's on there, spinny spin, and start kind of working the seat area down and also the valve. If, at any point you get any of this compound down into where the valve is going to be sliding or moving or in there, you want to stop. You want to clean that off. By no means do you want any of that compound anywhere inside other than here. As you're cleaning and checking and pulling off, make sure you clean with a fresh part of a rag every time, so you can make sure to see when the compound is completely off. And go ahead and check out that video below that's linked up, because that's going to really give you a good idea. And we're just going to continue to go through here. After you do a run, then you clean everything off, reassemble, and then re-water test. Some of these earlier ones, we had to do a couple passes. We're still kind of finding out the rhythm and the groove. So once we finish all the valves in question, we'll let you know exactly what worked for us and any issues that we ran into. When we left off, we were lapping valves. We were able to get all 10 of the exhaust valves lapped, sealing, pressurized, beautiful. we kept going on the intake, kept going, could not get them. They were, I think, beyond what we could do at home. We had to take it to a shop. It's been down there for 5 weeks. It is back here today. And they had to get in there and regrind some of the valve seats and get everything spec'd out and ready. But they got everything, did a fresh deck on the head, taking one thou off, and then installed all of the valve seats as well. But what we're not going to do is just say, oh, that looks good, and slap it on. That's what got us into trouble the first time, right? So we are going to start going through and checking all of our intake, our meeting 0.20 plus or minus 0.003, exhaust 0.40 plus or minus 0.003. So one by one we'll go down, because also we don't know if tappets have gotten mixed up. Valves getting mixed up, so we're just going to go through, and I am really hoping that everything comes into spec so that we can just do a final cleanup and you know, start getting the rest of what we got over here all back together. So we'll let you know how the blueprinting on the tolerances goes. Did a spec out on all the valves, and good lesson on why you should, and not just assume that when it comes back from the machine shop, it's ready to go. 9 out of 20 are out of spec. Was it a rush job? Was it they didn't know how to properly spec with the Volvo tool? Was it their feeler gauges are more dialed than ours? We're checking with these and then confirming exact precise with a more dialed tool. We got a couple, the 0.369s. We need 3.7 at the bottom end, so we're pretty close there. These ones on the intake side are pretty low. We are going to go through and respec all of those to get an even further measurement. And how you can do that is you can take a variety of different gauges and you can combine them. So for example, on this tool, we have super paper thin guys. We can double that up with another guy and then confirm with this. And that may give us a more exact number. Hopefully these ones will correct themselves, and then we're going to go back to measuring each tappet and playing musical tappets, and hopefully we will be able to get a few more within spec. And then the other option is, if it's not, you can, there's different size tappets, thicknesses that you can buy from Volvo. So maybe we're going to, these tolerances are all of them are too tight on the ones that are there. I wish some of them were over, because that would mean that some are looser and some are tighter, and we can kind of have some flip-flop action there. So if not, ordering some slightly thinner tappets from Volvo. Hopefully it's just a handful of those. And the other option is at the machine shop, pulling the valve and actually having the end of the valve stem taken down just a smidge. In this situation with these measurements, it would be, you know, a fraction of a millimeter. But at that point, we're taking it back to a shop who, you know, couldn't execute the work the first time. So we're going to keep messing around and go from there. I mean, the good thing is we saw the compression and the seal test there that they demonstrated on each of the cylinders, and that was solid. So the last thing we're going to do to push it over the finish line is just make sure our tolerances are within spec. It's off. It's on the table here. Let's make sure we get it 100% right this time and get it back on and running. So we'll do that and report where we end up. So we had played musical tappets. And initially we'll remember that we had a handful that were no good, right? 7 to be exact. And what we were trying to do was just move those 7 around. And so we went back to our auto calculating spreadsheet, entered all the new values in, and then we found out that based on what we had, we could get 19 out of 20 of these valves within spec. Keep in mind that spec is going to be either 0.2 or 0.4 plus or minus 0.003. So 0.217 to 0.230 on the intake, 0.37 to 0.43 on the exhaust, and 19 out of 20 we were able to get within that spec. And so two things there. One, there was another one, and we needed the 20th. We needed a tappet that would have a thickness of 15.84 to 15.92, which is very, very low because most of our tappets are going to be in the 16 range. We did not have a single tappet. The smallest one we had, 15.98, was too big for what we needed to get that other one within spec. So from the shop, it was mathematically impossible for this head to even be in spec. They sealed the valves, which is really what we needed them to do. We were in spec before we went, but in the process of doing whatever they were doing there with this grinding of the seats and everything, right, that opens up tolerances over here on this side of the engine when you're messing with stuff on the other side. The second thing is 19 out of those 20, while they were in spec, they were either very close to the low end or the high end of spec, where it would have been great to just have those, closer to what they were supposed to be. So we reran the formula and got rid of 7 that weren't really going to be useful. We started by just plugging stuff in and trying to get our spec to as close as possible. And you can see now we don't have the other spec of what we did, but 0.2 point, everything is very, very close. This is our off spec in the last column there, and that's way better. But what we did is you'll see 7 dots and you'll see X's. So what we're going to do, or what we already did this morning, is we went ahead and ordered 7 new tappets from Volvo in 4 different sizes. So we got one in a 15.88, 2 or 3 in a 16, and 1 in a 1602 and 1 in a 1604. So those new ones will represent replacing 7 of these ones, and we'll put everything pretty much really, really close to spec. So did the machine shop fail us? Yeah. Are they a bad shop? Not necessarily. They mainly work like everyone else. 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, 8 cylinders, Hondas, K-builds, stuff like that, right? And so a straight 5 is kind of foreign to them. And although we gave them the sheet and the printout, and they were able to get the valve seated, I mean, that's pretty common. But in terms of using the special Volvo tool and speccing all of the tolerances, they didn't. So at least we know that where the compression was being lost has been solved, and nothing 7 new tappets, which are ordered and will be here next week, can't fix. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go down the tappet to be used, and we're going to pull out what is our musical tappets, rearrange everything into the place that our spreadsheet tells us to put it, and respec and confirm that those 13 measurements are good. And then we'll pull everything apart, clean everything very thoroughly, and we may put the head back onto the block, and then that's one thing down, and then wait for the new tappets to come, and then just put those in, confirm the tolerances on the vehicle, and then know, okay, time to move forward in terms of sealing this back up. Okay, spreadsheet worked its magic. Waiting for new tappets, but you can see everything we got is like right there. So I think we're going to clean this up, pull all the tappets, blow this thing out with air, and let's go ahead and bolt the head on. The last 7 tappets we bought will exactly fill in the gaps of what we need within spec, based on the calculations that we have. And since most of the measuring's done, we can go ahead and get this guy on to the engine. So again, we'll clean that up. We're not going to really go too deep into this because you've already seen this in the earlier part of the series, but we'll start suiting everything up and you know, kind of moving things along. The old tappets labeled, we'll go ahead and keep those in a bag and keep those laying around for, you know, just extra situations like this or whatever. Head is back on. Everything was torqued down to spec. Next thing to do, leak down test. Can't do a compression test because everything is off on the top end. But leak down test is what kind of confirmed we had some bad valves last time. Aside from the compression test not getting our compression up, the leak down, if you remember the video, just air just, you know, pulsing out through there. So our new numbers on the new head on our leak down loss, anything 20 to 40% is low and acceptable, and we're coming in at 3 to 6%, like almost nothing. So next thing we're going to do is probably start bolting some other things up on here while we wait for our new tappets. We might pop back to the exhaust and get that going, and just whatever else we can kind of bolt on to keep things moving until we wait for the rest of the new internals to come. Our tappets from Volvo have arrived. So what we did is we went ahead and measured all of them, spec'd them out, what they should be, what they actually were, and then any major variations on there. So we went down and we respec'd all these values now into our overall spreadsheet. Everything was looking good, and the last thing we are doing is going back and we are going to double check every single one of the tolerances, because now that there's new parts in there, we just need to make sure that everything lines up, and we may have to play some adjustment on there as well, just to make sure everything is where it needs to be. Today we have a stripped bolt or a stripped thread on our head. We were working on torquing and clearancing everything for the head to go back on, checking all the valves, all the clearances. Ran into a problem where one of the holes is stripped out, so we have to repair that. We're going to show you what we're going to do to remedy that, and that's because the head is already bolted on, torqued down, new head gasket, and we realized that after the fact we can't take it off. We can take it down to a machine shop, but we're going to go ahead and do the thread repair here. Okay, so as we're working through and trying to get this head back on, specking all the tolerances, we were going through and then we realized we had a strip bolt there, and our Volvo tool, which is needed. Here's the bottom half of it. Let's see if we can, there it is, of our cam holding tool, top half of it. Those go into the timing cover holes to lock it down so that you can properly check tappet roller clearances. So as we were getting here, and once we realized it, oh yeah, it was a little weird last time, but it held up. But apparently after the machine shop was messing around with it and, you know, didn't know that it was, threads were on their way out. So we got over here, and then we realized the whole clamping tool was not holding properly and it was spinning. These are the M7 by 35, M7 times 1.0, 35 mil. And this is a great shout out for the Elevate titanium replacements of those nasty ugly ones. I'll have a link to that product down in there as well. So what we did is we got the helicoil set for the M7 5546-7. The metrics are blue, the SAEs are red, and easily enough, the part number dash ends in the thread pitch. So we had our local parts store order this up. I did see AutoZone and O'Reilly's, and they typically have those on the shelf, but that's a couple hour drive for us round trip. So anyways, tool comes with the thread inserts, a thread insert tool, and the actual cutting guy. This little handle came out of another kit that I had, so if you're ordering this up, you want to make sure that you have something like that. What we did is, initially, because the head is off, or the timing cover is off, and we're working inside, we want to make sure none of the bits of shavings that come out of here go inside. And then we placed in the screw hole right next to it one of the samples, and then we slowly, and the sample is just so that we can see the alignment straight up and down, and then the pitch of it back and forth as well. And then pretty much we just start this very, very slowly, right? And the hole was almost completely stripped out. Like, you could take that bolt and you can, just go in and out. So what this does is it bores out and cuts and cleans the proper size threads in that hole for the insert to go in. The insert will then go in, and then once it does, we will be able to then apply our bolt in there, and it will actually be stronger than the initial threads that we ripped out of there. So it doesn't have any instructions on there, but essentially you're going to start this hole, and the bottom of the tool is a little bit wider, so you can kind of get in there and start moving it. And then as you're going, you are going to just kind of turn and then work backwards. You're going to turn, and then you feel it get a little stiff. You're just going to kind of let it cut a little and then go backwards. And then every maybe 3 turns, so like right here, we hit a, it's a dead stop. So we're going to go ahead and just give it a little turn, making sure that we are straight up and down, nice and hard, and then we're going to move back. And what that does is you'll see those ridges in there. As you are moving and turning back, all the material that you're cutting off collects into these and stays out of the way as you continue to cut down. So we're going to essentially just continue that process. It turns, it gets a little difficult, and then we apply pressure and give it maybe, an 1/8 of a turn. Then we go back, and then when we go back into that, we're able to go a little further. So now we can see, let's get it to here, right? Tool is 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then we work it backwards. And then we're able to get back to that same position in ease. And then we'll go a little bit further, pushing down. Now we're at, maybe the 2 o'clock, 7 position, work it back and turn it back. And then as we get back to that position, we'll see, oh, it's easier. So you kind of just cut it like that all the way down. And then every maybe half rotation, I go back and I just kind of go all the way, maybe a couple, and then work it in and just kind of let those threads and let that tool kind of cut those threads nice and fine. So we'll bring you back when we are actually going to do the insert. We'll see, sun's already gone down over there, so we'll see how much time we got today. Okay, so here is the tool. Hole is all bored out. Important to note that the bolt size is M7, right? But the actual tool is going to be quite a bit larger than that, because what it does is it bores out the hole while inserting threads, and those threads in there will match the size of the insert. The internal diameter of the insert is still M7. The outer diameter is going to be big enough for what the tool has bored out. This is on aluminum. It wasn't magnetically charged, so we had to get some air and kind of blow all the debris that was out of there, because this is a capped hole there on the bottom. So interesting to note, you'll notice right, let's see if we can get it. See, there's a little lip on the bottom of this tool, and then on the bottom of the coil you'll see a little cross. And what happens is when you put the tool in, it will grab against that little notch in there, and that is what will allow this to insert in. And there's the notch. So I'll suit up the same square head, apply some pressure, and this is going straight down into our new hole. Once the insert has been put in, you simply screw it out, and this will work itself right back out, leaving the insert. And now if we look in there, see those beautiful new threads. Should have showed you it before, but essentially just imagine a hole that didn't have any threads in it. So next we can do a test, just a quick test, right? We can take our M7 by 1 and that guy's going in there nice and firm, and that's because now it will expand the ring as it goes down. And oh, beauty, beauty. And just a little sample on there, just halfway down, and that thing is rock solid. So if you're ever in a pinch and you don't want to go down to a machine shop, or for whatever reason, this is a good quick fix option. The entire head is spec'd and blueprinted. We went through everything, and after everything is within spec minus those 3 blue dots. Those are 3 additional tappets that I ordered today. And why did we need those? When we measured initially, it turned out we had a stripped bolt here. And so the clamping tool wasn't clamping and putting the proper force, and our reading was off. Once we realized that, we did another video going up on a helicoil repair on that, and then we respect. So as of now, 18 out of 20 are within perfect spec, very, very close, within 0.005, and your tolerance is allowed to be up or down 0.03. So we're spot on. And a quick tip is we were always double checking what we were doing. So for example, if we're doing a 20, or let's say a 40 feeler, you want to actually precisely measure this and get it. And what we did is, there's an example of the intake side. 1 feeler gauge, the one we're looking at now, 18 was actually 185, 20 was 204, 23 was 225, right? So these things are not exact. And then on the Volvo special feeler gauge, same thing. We see that there's variation on there. And then we made some randoms, right? Because these typically will jump up. So what we would do is we would say, hey, if we put a 10 and an 8 together of the smaller ones, that gives us a 185. Or if we put a 10, 5, and 4 together, we had a 197, which gives us some more options to really dial in and get close. All the tappets are blueprinted, and so we didn't need a new tappet for I4. We were still 0.015, which is within range, but we figured since we were ordering these two, let's just get that one dialed to spec as well. So at this point, order is in with Volvo, and those will probably come next week. Lower intake manny is on, fuel rail wiring is on, so I think we're just going to, while we're waiting, continue cleaning up the engine bay, bolting up the exhaust, and seeing what else we can do while we wait for these new tappets to come and get going. We have done it. Our last set of tappets arrived from Volvo this morning. We plugged those in, spec'd it, and you can see now we are spot on. Tappet's still all blueprinted, tolerance is all blueprinted. We're ready to clean this thing up and start putting it back together.
So here's a picture of the final engine. We didn't really document much after the blueprinting was done because assembling and doing timing and everything else had already been covered earlier in this series. But essentially put it back together, checked all the timing, got everything dialed in, and then we fired it up. Everything was good. Not two check engine lights, unrelated to the engine build. We had a bad boost sensor, and we had a loose wire for our turbocharger solenoid. Those videos are already up previously on the channel. But we just went through. As of the time of me speaking into this microphone, we have 300 miles on the vehicle. No check engines. Everything is good. Compression checks are good. Everything's dialed. So we are going to get back at you when we hit 500 miles here, which will probably be, I don't know, maybe another 2 weeks. We're going to drain the oil. We're going to recap what we're doing, what we're looking for at that 500 mile interval mark. And then we'll probably do a final video on that. We're currently still data logging and getting the tune dialed in. So you know, we're up and running, and we're going to keep you guys updated as well.